Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. This is part 2 of the podcast, and you guys already know, you must do, that this is the part of the show where we have a look at your Instagram responses from the previous episode, and that previous episode was on Vampire Films 2, the sequel, and Andrew Corns from the Revisionist Almanac podcast went with Let the Right One In. Jake from the Movie Boners podcast went with, ironically, The Twilight Saga. Anton Kinelov went with Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. And Ellie, my girlfriend, went with Twilight. No surprise from her. Parker, what is your vampire film of choice for you?
This one was easy because this is a movie that I have seen a million times, and I love it so much, and that it has to be Blade.
Nice.
I just that opening scene, Deacon Frost, everything about that movie is just fun. And then you get Blade 2, and it's just more fun. So, Blade. I give the slight edge to Blade over Blade 2, just because. Yeah, it's that introduction is just so good.
Can't beat that line. You can't beat that line.
No.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. Can't beat it. Can't do it. I think for me, I would go for a Christopher Landon movie, and I would go Fright Night. I think it's super cool for vampires, and it kind of brings in more of this campy 50s element. Hammer element, which is great, as well as keeping like a great 80s tone with the gore and stuff.
Which is directed by the same guy who directed the movie we're about to talk about.
It is Mr. Tom Holland. No, not Spider-Man. No.
He didn't even exist.
No, he was just a thought. Whereas everybody knew who this guy was. What horror fans do.
Yes.
Yeah, the great Tom Holland. So, Parker, what is your choice for slasher films?
My choice is one of my top 5 favorite films of all time, and that is 1988's Child's Play.
Nice. So why did you pick Child's Play?
Because this is one of my favorite movies of all time. So, and it's a slasher, and it also pays homage to one of my favorite films of all time, and the fact that both Child's Play and Jaws has the same cinematographer, which is a great connection. And it feels great. Like, I think a lot of people pick part 2 as their favorite of the Child's Play franchise. I think that's kind of a consensus. It's either that or like Bride of Chucky. But for me, it'll always be the original, just because it's the introduction to the character. The way that it's shot is fantastic compared to what we get in the sequels. Because the sequels, it's like, we already know Chucky, we already know what he's about, so we don't need to hide him as much as we did in the original. We wanted to make it like you don't actually believe there's a doll killing people, that it may be this kid, and there's some psychological thing going on, which was one of the screenplays. One of the ideas that they had for this movie was the fact that it was always going to be Andy. There was no Chucky. He had a doll named Chucky, but it was just a doll. He was using it as kind of his scapegoat, or for like an escape of his psyche. And there was a lot of scripts for this movie that were interesting. I would be like, I would have watched that. I would have watched that.
So it's sort of like Psycho, but for kids. Well, for 8
kids. Yeah, pretty much. And Tom Holland, who actually was a writer for Psycho 2, coming in and doing he hit the script we get is primarily his. It was originally written by Don Mancini, who was like the father of the Child's Play franchise. But Tom Holland is he likes to have a lot of the control on his films, and that's kind of why he doesn't do anything with this franchise after this because they kind of pushed him out because they were like, we don't want him like overtaking things. They wanted to do the sequels their way and all that. And so
that's frustrating.
This feels strictly like a Tom Holland movie. You get all those elements that you'd seen in Fright Night and a lot of his writing credits. But yeah, I just love how this movie's shot, and I love the characters, and it's not just a typical slasher. And I think that's what I think puts it, and I think a lot of people don't give Chucky the full credit that I think he deserves as a slasher like
icon,
as a villain. Yeah, he's an icon. I think he belongs in the pantheon along with Michael Myers and Freddy and Jason. Jason, I think, and I think Friday the 13th fans will probably get a little butthurt about this, but I think it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
I think Child's Play gives us a little bit something new every time. Yeah, we get different kills, and I think the sequels, some of the sequels do get a little samey, but I think what the original did was kind of unique for the time because you're questioning things. And I think that's the same. We could talk about, Nightmare on Elm Street, how different the original is to the sequels. And yeah, a lot of people will always put number 2 as their favorite or Bride of Chucky. The original will always have that special place in my heart for just what it wanted to do. And it wasn't afraid to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, I guess, because typically the sequel to the original is never really regarded as the best one in the franchise. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, they kind of do go down a very different route, and they kind of bring it back to its roots in Dream Warriors. And with Halloween 2, it's not amazing really compared to the iconic movie that the first one is. That's definitely one of my favorite films of all time, Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. First time I saw that, I was very small, scared the absolute shit out of me, so that's always been etched in my brain with that film. So sequels are hard to do with in horror. So,
and I think why this franchise has worked so well is because they've always had the same people or somebody from a prior, Don Mancini has been there since the beginning. So the continuity is pretty consistent throughout the franchise. We even got 3 seasons of a show that literally links to all of the movies that came before it. And it all made sense to that world. And I think that's kind of the problem with a lot of franchises is they always had other people coming in and doing something. Like there was you always had like consultants from other films, but it was always somebody new doing something, and they'd be like, I don't like what they did in that movie, so I'm just going to ignore it. And so the continuity kind of falls apart, where Child's Play kind of, it always seems to connect itself pretty well throughout the entirety of the franchise. Even when it got super slapstick with Seed of Chucky, where it was so meta and ridiculous that even when they brought it back, for Curse of Chucky, it's still like Seed of Chucky still existed. Like it didn't go away. Like the things that happened in that movie still were part of the universe. Yeah. And it would later have an impact in the show. And so I think that's what I appreciate a lot about this franchise is the fact that people care. There are people behind that care so much that they're willing to just make it their career. And that's what Don Mancini's been able to do. He's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm the Chucky guy. I don't like, I could go off and write a bunch of other stuff and become famous or maybe write something successful that has nothing to do with Chucky. But you know what? I'm just going to keep riding this until the wheels fall off. And you know what? It's been working out.
Dolls are always going to be creepy. So it's going to warrant sequels.
Yep.
So what happens in Child's Play, Parker?
So a little boy named Andy, 6 years old, wants a good guy doll. It's like the new thing. It's like the Cabbage Patch Kid of the world right now. And his mom buys this doll from a peddler behind her store, and chaos ensues. Literally, we find out that the doll is possessed by the soul of a serial killer, and he needs to get out of this body. So he needs to put his soul in the boy's body, and crazy things ensue. A lot of psychological things, the whole crying wolf thing where like, blaming it on something that's inanimate, at least what most people would believe. And then it turns out that the child was right the whole time. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for an 87-minute movie, but it works.
Absolutely. So initial reactions for me, I really like this film. It's really well crafted for me. Sort of similar in some respects to the final chapter, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, where, again, you've got a very similar level of craft in how they construct the kills, I would say. But I think Child's Play feels cleaner. It feels more precise. And then there's a lot of like Brian De Palma in there for me, which I really enjoyed. And just the story is just really interesting, where you think it's going down one particular road and then certain reveals happen. You're like, oh, okay, it sort of works, but I'm going with it. It's surprising, but I liked it in the end. Yeah, it's a really good fun ride. And it's a great kind of tonal mix here with the horror and the comedy. There's some really funny stuff as well as some pretty horrible stuff, which is great. So yeah, ultimately I really enjoyed this one. Good, solid slasher for me. So directing then, I kind of loved how the film just goes straight into the action scene, and into this action scene with Chris Sarandon as a cop, Mike Norris chasing Brad Dourif as Charles Lee Ray, the serial killer. I mean, it's nothing that special. And when they get into kind of the toy shop and Chris Sarandon shoots him and is making lots of noise and Sarandon can't find him. And I think they were like stretching the cat and mouse stuff a bit too much there. Like, come on, he's making loads of noise. And when like Charles staggers across like the wall of Chucky toys, I was like, yep, they're going to fall on him. And they do. You know, the explosion at the end of that scene is brilliantly over the top, though. So a pretty like solid start, I would say, to get you into this movie.
Yeah, that opening was so well done because, yeah, like I said, it's not subtle. It just opens, and you're just because imagine being in the theater and not knowing how this movie is or what this movie's even about, and kind of it opening to this, and then him getting shot, and then it was this whole thing where. I remember watching the behind the scenes of this, and Don Mancini's like, the voodoo part of this movie, I didn't want that. That wasn't part of my script. It was supposed to be this whole blood oath thing, or the voodoo was kind of an inclusion by Tom Holland himself, which then became a thing, a whole thing in the franchise. But it was kind of surprising where you're like, it's this typical police chase of this killer, and then he just is doing this weird chant to a doll in the middle of a toy store, and like the clouds go overhead, and you're sitting there going, what the hell is happening right now? And then the toy store explodes, and you're like, all right, what's going to happen now? Because of the fact that I was talking about before, how this was originally supposed to be like all Andy, like it was going to be at the end, you were going to find out Andy was behind everything, and so the opening kind of makes you believe, oh well, it can't be, but it's still going to shoot it in such a way where you actually still are questioning whether or not things are actually happening.
I mean, it's done in such a pace that everything happens so quickly. I feel like that you don't have time to kind of process exactly what's going on, and you're like, okay, there's weird language happening, clouds, lightning, explosions.
Yep.
And next scene. And obviously you get a vague idea of what's happening, but you really don't have time to just really process, I guess. It does a great job of that. I guess because it does seem very silly, and I definitely appreciate it and the pace of it. It's a great opening, I would say.
It cuts to this adorable kid.
Yeah.
Tragedy to an adorable kid making the worst breakfast ever concocted.
Yeah. The first kill of Maggie Peterson is really well constructed, I think, for me. Like, you have like the typical an object reappearing when it wasn't there before. Here Maggie assumes Andy the kid moves Chucky to the chair to watch the news. And then, of course, Maggie puts Chucky back in bed with Andy. Then I just kind of love the very precise POV shots of Chucky where he runs around the corner, sees Maggie, and then the camera kind of like backs up to hide back behind the corner, when he moves the chair and later picks up the hammer. Just very carefully done. Again, it kind of just reminded me a lot of Brian De Palma's POV shots in his films.
Mm-hmm.
They're so precise. Then kind of the film cuts the tension a bit with the phone call, and then kind of the film hasn't revealed Chucky walking on his own yet. You haven't really seen a good look at him being possessed.
You just see like a flash in the back of a room.
Yeah,
where you're like, because that's the thing. It's like it's building up. It's very much like I like to compare this to Jaws because Chucky is the shark, and you don't see see Chucky for a while. Like you don't see a full reveal of Chucky until he meets John, the voodoo guy, later on in the movie, and that's like you're getting close to the end. You see his hand here and there, and you see little bits of it, but like in this that opening kill with Aunt Maggie, you literally see a flash behind in the back of the room. You see like a chair move, but you don't see who's moving it. You see her get hit in the head, but you don't see a hand. You don't see anything. So it's one of those things where you're like, you could question, is it Andy? And they try to connect that when they investigate. They see the shoe prints, and he's got the pajamas with the soles on the bottom, and I think it's all well done. And the whole phone call, that kind of like you're super tense. You're wondering when it's going to happen because it's going to happen, and then the phone call comes through, and it kind of it messes with it, but it also you get right back into it. Because
you haven't seen him yet.
Right. She thinks she sees something and she moves it. And as soon as she moves it and goes, scare me half to death. And as soon as she says that line, she turns around and gets smoked in the face by this tiny hammer, which causes her to fall out the window, which is a great, introduction to like what this is going to be all about.
Yeah, another girl crashing through a window and landing on a car.
Yes, this time very far fall. So
yes,
he is definitely dead.
yeah. Just the one fake out sequence here before she gets killed, so it's slightly more efficient, I think, because I think the whole scene has done a great job of building up a lot of tension. So I feel like they can get away with just having the one fake out with the plant pot move, and then literally the next shot is her bop with the hammer. So that was really well done.
Yeah, and we all the subtle things that happen with Chucky beforehand. The whole hey Maggie, Chucky wants to watch the 9:00 news, and you get like the subtle head movements and the eyes that look towards the TV when the Charles Lee Ray story pops up, and her finding him again, and it's just shot so well. Like just the simplicity of her walking down a hallway. It's like it's not right up on her. Like it kind of zooms out to the point, but it's following her in such a way where it's like you gotta figure like there's no way Andy put him back there. Like he's been in the same spot the whole time, but of course he's 6. She doesn't know.
I think. I was always worried going into this film by how much they are going to actually show Chucky moving by itself with visual effects, and how much camera direction are they going to use to tell the story with what Chucky's doing off camera. But I think what's great about it is that you have this kind of creepy progression of how much Tom Holland is showing of Chucky, and it feels like you're going to see more of Chucky in each scene. I like the scene where like Karen finds out that the doll has no batteries in it, and Chucky ends up attacking her, and it's directed with such a pace that it didn't feel goofy or funny to me. That Karen is just holding holding a doll that's trying to pretend to kill her, kind of thing. The bite scene felt really dangerous to me and really kind of powerful in that moment. When Chucky runs out of the room and down the elevator unseen, it felt like the film is still holding back for later, and not because of their limitations that they have. So I thought the progression of, as you're saying about Jaws, of slowly revealing Chucky throughout the movie is really great. And it's not because of they're limited of what they can do. I didn't feel that at all.
Yeah, and when you get that full reveal of him, actually, his first reveal is him attacking Norris in his car, right? Or no, it would be the scene where she gets him to come to life. Yeah, which is fantastic because it's like, she realizes the batteries aren't in the Chucky, and she goes and picks him up and like opens up
to burn him.
Well, she opens up the back, realizes there's no batteries, and she drops him, and he rolls under. Now you could have just assumed they could have just been like, okay, he figures out he's discovered. He's just going to crawl out from underneath the couch, but he's like, nah, I'm gonna stick with this whole facade. Like I'm still a doll until she threatens him by throwing him in the fire, and which is foreshadowing for how the movie ends. And then he snaps, and you get to see like his true form, and it's the transition is so well done because of course it's like she has to react to this actual doll, and then they have to switch him out for the animatronic doll that has all the facial movements and everything, which is fantastic.
So well cut together.
Oh yeah, Kevin Yeager, who was the effects guy behind all the Chucky animatronics and everything, who actually would end up marrying Catherine Hicks, who plays Karen. He did such a great job, and he actually did a bunch of work on some of the sequels, and I think he actually helped some of the work on the show for a little bit. It's just so well done. The transitioning, of course, there are certain scenes where you're like, okay, like when they have to use an actual person in like a Chucky suit,
you can tell
it's kind of jarring, but it makes sense for certain scenes. Like it's not overplayed, like it's not overdone to the point where it just kind of throws you off. But those animatronics are so well crafted, and everything, the way they're able to kind of match the mouth movements with Brad Dourif's voice, because like Brad Dourif didn't do it like live. It was they had him record the lines, and then they would actually play the lines on like like they would feed it back to him as they would do the puppet movements and all that.
Yeah.
So it's really well crafted, and the fact of everything just feels so real, like with the fight between her and Chucky and him biting her, and it feels real. And then I love the fact that he just runs away and you don't see him after he leaves. Like you just see the elevator go down, but you don't actually see him in there doing anything.
He's a short guy. So
and when he runs out, you don't even see him there either. I think it's
good at hiding.
Yeah, it's really well done because you don't see him too much. Like it's never like every time you see him in a scene, except for the ending, because I feel like that's where you have to have that full reveal and he has to be like very much part of the scene and everything that's going on. So of course you have to see him doing his thing for a long period of time. But I love these others, like this scene and Mike's attack scene. Like you see him for quite a bit, he's choking him out, and then you see, I love the whole thing where he's running around his car.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene. Yeah,
when the car flips and him shooting at him and everything, and then one of my favorites is his interaction with John the Voodoo guy.
Okay,
because that's your like full reveal. This is where you get to hear his voice, like him have a normal conversation without him screaming or anything, where he confesses like, listen, I thought I was good. I thought no one could hurt me. And I got shot and it hurt like hell. And
you're actually turning human.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm not helping you. You're an abomination. And like that whole interaction is fantastic. Like him going away. Yeah. The John situation is one of my favorites because of just everything that kind of happens and kind of just shows the fantastic animatronic work that Yeager and his team did for this movie. It's so good because it's all animatronics in this one, in that John scene of him like full body walking across the floor and all that. I thought it was really well done.
For me, my favorite scene is the car chase scene where Chucky pops up from behind Sarandon driving, and you think, oh, it's just going to be a typical strangulation and then a crash will inevitably happen. No, it's the one scene that's actually quite funny too, where Sarandon fights him off and uses and then Chucky uses a kitchen knife to try and stab him in the ass from under the seat.
Yeah,
that was funny to me. Like the way Chucky holds down the gas pedal, that was clever and funny too. Plus, it's brilliantly directed as if it's a proper action movie chase too. Then just great like cat and mouse stuff after the car crash, where you do actually see Chucky running, and there's like no hiding him anymore, which is great for the most part anyway. But yeah, really, really fun scene for me.
Yeah, the fact that he's like revealed like fully, but then they have him hide and run around, and you even get I love the shot of him like laying there, and then Chucky's only his hand comes and grabs that knife and then runs away. But then he gets shot, and I love that kind of like that slow-mo, bullet impacts him getting flown back, and then you don't really get to see a reaction. He just kind of runs away, and then that's kind of the end of it.
Like, I got shot. What the hell?
Yeah.
This is not supposed to hurt. I'm plastic now.
The funny thing is on the I have the Scream Factory 4K of this. I own this movie like 5 different ways. But
VHS?
That's the only one I don't own is the VHS copy of that. But there's a commentary that you can listen to where it's a Chucky commentary, where actually Chucky commentates all of his kills and like the setup for it and like what he could do. And during the car during the car scene, he talks about how he's like, the thing I was most known for and the thing I was the best at was strangulation, and that's the one thing that I can't do very well as a doll because I'm so small. It's hard for me to get in those certain positions, so that's why I had to resort to using a knife mostly. And I was like, it's so stupid, but it was one of those commentaries. I'm like, I can't pass up listening to just Chucky commentate his own kills.
I love it when they do that, when they stay in character for commentaries. One of my favorite ones is from Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, where he stays as the Australian dude.
Oh, as his character,
as the black dude. Yeah, that's funny. So, directing score for me for Child's Play, it's really impressive. It really is. So, just really clean and precise. Nothing really feels out of place. And like the most impressive thing for me is that the directing doesn't feel like they're being limited by what they can do with Chucky. It just feels very natural in the fact that they're just hiding him for really great reveals and really great sequences. They're not hiding him because they can't show him like this in a particular way.
Right.
Which is really great. So I'm going to go like an 8.2.
Okay. I am going to go higher because I think that everything is just shot beautifully. Like the car, we'll go back to the car scene.
Yeah.
I feel in newer movies, and I hate to bash newer movies because I like to give them a chance, but I feel like there are just things that were done 20, 30 years ago that were just done so much better. When you're shooting a car scene and there's a fight going on, I feel like in newer movies you would be, you'd be on Chris Sarandon's face, then you'd be on Chucky, then you'd be on Chris Sarandon, and it would just kind of bounce back and forth, and you're just like, why?
Where am I?
They do that a couple times. They'll do it where they'll like at first it'll show the cord going around Norris's neck, and then it'll show that Chucky is actually the one doing it, and then they do a wider shot where it looks like the guy is like the cameraman must be like right outside the windshield, kind of at an angle, so you actually see both of them in the same shot as the thing is happening.
Yeah.
But then when they go, like when Chucky goes under the seat and is attacking, it's not showing Chucky under the seat. It's just showing the knife. So it would just show the knife, and then it would show Norris's reaction to that. And then, I just think like it would have just been so nauseating if that was done today, like by some action director.
It'd be super quick.
I'm not going to say Paul W.S. Anderson because that means I would have to call out Paul W.S. Anderson. Whatever. I don't understand it. But for one, it was the cinematography done by a fantastic cinematographer, Bill Butler, who also did Jaws, and that's some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. And I think Tom Holland's direction, just getting certain characters to do certain things, like the crying scene of Andy when he's in the institution and Chucky's going to come get him. And he's trying to like beg his way out. Like, please, someone listen to me. There is a doll that is going to kill me. I'm going to die. And he actually breaks down and cries. And I think people give a lot of grief to, oh God, why am I blanking on his name right now? The actor who plays Andy, Alex Vincent. Oh my God. My brain just shut off right there. A lot of people give grief to Alex Vincent's performance in this.
I've seen worse.
I've seen way worse by child actors.
Yeah.
I think there are certain scenes where it's like, okay, it's somebody on the side, like, here's your line. Read it here. But that scene alone puts him at another level because I think it was done so well. And knowing how they did it, Tom Holland really kind of digging into him and being like, you got to, like, this is what I need from you. This is what I need from you. And I heard like his mom had to be on the set because he was only like 6 or 7 years old. So of course she had to be there, and her allowing Tom Holland to do what he had to do to get him to react. And I think it was all done so well. And I think the fact of just hiding Chucky for as long as they could and making it effective is really of the combo of Holland and Butler. So I'm going to give it a 9, a solid 9. I'll put it at a solid 9. I'll give it a room. I don't want to say it's a perfect 10 because I think there may be some things that could be wrong, but I'll give it a 9 because I think it's pretty close to being perfect.
Nice.
The way that it's shot and directed.
Yeah, another scene I forgot to mention is the death of the doctor in the hospital when Chucky puts on the electric thing,
the electroshock therapy thing. Yeah,
that was great with the makeup. I was like, oh, that's pretty creepy and gory. He goes, it's like he's burning from the inside. That was great. Scary. So screenplay then. So in the first half hour, only the 6-year-old kid Andy thinks that Chucky is alive, and the adults in this, his mum and Chris Sarandon, the cop, think he's just being a silly kid, to then thinking he's insane. The cop does, and some others, and they don't believe him at all. I'm glad they don't keep that type of story going until like the final scene. We kind of have seen that in previous films because it would have just got like quite tiresome and boring. And it's interesting how like the reveal happens too when Karen, the mum, finds out Chucky doesn't have any batteries in the doll. Then the film becomes more of like a serial killer crime story in a way, with them trying to find out who this guy is and who he's going to kill next. But he just happens to be a kid's toy. So in that sense. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of setup, and that they don't fall into your typical stereotypical kind of narrative beats with the crying wolf type story. So
yeah, and they consistently create tension throughout the whole movie by, like, at first Andy is the only one that says that Chucky's alive. No one believes him, not even his own mother. It even gets to the point where she is sitting on his bed like, Chucky isn't real. Like, why? Like, and Andy's constantly like, but he is, and she is just so fed up. And then she gets the reveal. So now she believes, like, she knows that he is alive. Now she is trying to tell Norris. Norris thinks she's nuts.
Yeah, as you would.
Then they go down and they meet the peddler, and they discover where Chucky was, where that doll was found, which was in front of that toy store. Which then Norris kind of starts to believe her, but he's not fully there because he hasn't seen it yet.
Norris kind of goes and finds Karen because he's trying to just protect Karen at this point,
right?
Her own, just protecting her from herself,
right? Exactly,
not to get herself in trouble with homeless people.
Right. And so when he finds out where the doll was found, he starts to then, like, something clicks, and he's like, okay, I don't fully believe you, but I feel there's something here. And so that's where you get the whole thing of, like, he, who did Charles Lee Ray want to kill? And it was like Eddie Caputo and me. So then that's when they get the car scene where Chucky attacks Norris, which then puts Norris on the list of people who know that Chucky is alive. And even by the time the movie ends, Chucky has been dispatched. He has been destroyed. The other cop comes, doesn't believe the situation until he gets attacked. But then the movie ends with Norris saying to the other cop, "Now do you believe me?" And he goes, "Yeah, but who's going to believe me?" And that's a perfect way, because like, you got to think rationally. If this happens to you, even if you did have like 2 to 3 witnesses, how many people are going to believe that happened? That piece of plastic that is melted on the floor in pieces was trying to kill people or did kill people.
There's always going to be someone that's going to think you're insane because of this ridiculous story. There's always going to be a constant cycle, and I love the fact that they still leave it there hanging that, yes, more people know that Chucky was real, but there's always going to be people. The film is telling you there's always going to be people that won't believe your story.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of horror movies, a lot of slashers that play into crazy things that just aren't real, like that you just wouldn't expect happen. Everyone just seems to go with it. They're just like, sure, why not? And it's like, this movie is like, no, there's going to be repercussions. There's going to be like, and if you've ever seen the sequel, there are like, Andy's mom goes to an institution because they think she's crazy. Right. Norris retires from the force because they pretty much like push him out because they don't believe his crazy story. And Andy ends up getting into foster care. So it's not like when they went into the sequel, they were like, yeah, remember like how the last one ended? We're going to make sure it's a happy, like they're going to live happily ever after. No. Bad things are going to continue to happen even if Chucky's not involved. And I think that's another thing I appreciate about this franchise is just the events of a prior movie are going to
follow through.
They're going to follow through in the sequels.
Yeah. Another aspect I kind of liked about kind of the reveals of who these characters know that Chucky is alive is the fact that I was a tad worried that maybe, Norris finding out that Chucky is real came a bit too soon, but I think it still definitely worked for me because I think the detective aspect of this story is strong enough, and I don't think it would have worked as well if Norris kind of comes in too late, if you know what I mean, and kind of is more of a saves the day type character in that last scene. So in the end, I quite like the fact that Norris does learn the truth about Chucky just after the halfway point. So it doesn't feel too tacked on. So yeah, that was good for me.
Yeah, I think everybody's reveal, like finding out is perfectly timed. Like it's not like as soon as Karen realizes Chucky's alive that then she runs to Norris and Norris is like, really? All right, I believe you. And you're just like, oh, what? Why? Why do you believe her? That kind of seems crazy. I feel like because in his head, he's just, when she comes to him to say, hey, Chucky's alive, he's like, I think you're just saying this so that we can get your son out of that place. And, that's his mindset. It's like, he goes after her when she runs away to go find the peddler, to protect her. He doesn't give a crap about what nonsense she's spewing. He just wants to make sure she doesn't get herself hurt, which she almost does. So thank God he was there.
Yeah.
But I think, and then his reveal of Chucky is perfectly placed and everything. And I think just the reveal of Chucky himself, the fact that we fully get to see him come to life and we get that like, oh shit, this was a doll the whole time. Like, yes, there were subtle nods here and there to make you believe that he was real. But now we know it wasn't Andy just being a kid with an imagination. It was actually a doll. And I just think it's so well done. Because like when you see the doll talk to Andy, it's just the doll. Like you're not seeing the doll come to life and like, lean into Andy and whisper in his ear or something. No. Like he's always in doll form and Andy's like, putting his ear up against his mouth to see what, and then you don't hear anything. And I think that's so well done. Like later on with this series, Chucky, right? It's Chucky. So like they do that later on. Like there is no as much subtlety as there is in this one where it's like, okay, maybe it's just Andy. Maybe it's a 6-year-old's imaginations that's getting the better of him. And it's like, also, where is this kid getting this imagination where he's just like, oh yeah, my doll is Chucky's Charles Lee Ray though. Like he told me that's who he is. And it's like, but I get it. I guess it's all, well, he might've heard it from the news. That name's flying all over the news. So
yeah, I think from an audience point of view though, I was never in doubt that Chucky wasn't real. I always thought, no, Andy is telling the truth, even before, the reveal.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to see the poster,
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not going to mark it down because of the fact that aspect of the story wasn't strong, but it doesn't need to be strong.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like the last few scenes, I think, from a directional point of view, are good. And there's just kind of a great combination of showing Chucky in action mode and giving him a bit of style with a few like silhouette shots and close-up shots of his hand holding the knife as he walks down the corridor in those last scenes. Plus the film still uses like the POV shots to great effect. But what's great about the last scene from a screenplay point of view is it's basically like one-upping the Terminator for me, where Chucky has 3 death scenes, basically. You think they've burnt him alive in the fireplace, but obviously the film has made it clear that you have to destroy the heart to kill him. So he can't be dead. But it was still kind of it was cool seeing him like burn. And that whole design was great. When he does attack them again, his burnt look is like wonderfully black and horrible. Then I loved it when like Karen is blowing off each body part off Chucky, and he keeps coming forward. And I love the fact too that I think the head gets blown off first.
Yep.
Which is kind of funny. And then it ends up being like a Terminator homage with Chucky just having his arm left, trying to move forward, but not really going anywhere. And then when Karen basically riddles him with bullets, he has to be dead, right? Nope. When Sarandon's partner is comes up to see what the hell's going on, and he's kind of being really cocky, basically playing with Chucky's burnt head, the body pops up from behind him, of course, and nearly strangles him. I think the fact that the partner was playing with the head for a bit too long sort of gave it away that Chucky will still come back, but only like a tiny bit, I think. But it's still a really bold way to basically end your film with 3 deaths.
Yeah.
Effectively. So good.
Absolutely. I think another nice feature that they put in this was the fact that further, like as the movie progresses, Chucky's appearance changes. So, John, when he visits John and he explains like, hey, I got shot and it hurt. And he's like, oh, well, you're becoming more human. And he's like, the longer you stay in that body, the more human you become. And you actually see that on Chucky. So, in the beginning, he looks like a good guy doll, like a generic good guy doll. But as the movie progresses, he actually ages and he resorts to Charles Lee Ray's look. So his hairline starts to go back and his skin starts to get a little more gangrene looking. And yeah, he starts to look sick. Like he's starting to look like a little person. And I always love that little touch, like at the end when he is trying to transfer his soul into Andy before Karen and Mike bust through the door, and just that look, that iconic look when the door gets knocked on and he kind of looks. He's still got the burn scar on his face and his hair is disheveled and hairline's dipped, his skin, and just looks bad. And man, it's fantastic. But yeah, I love the kind of the fake out, the start of it all is the fireplace scene, which is to me is an iconic situation. The whole thing with him in the fireplace and Karen's trying to fight him back, and she has Andy go get the matches, and he lights the match, and that's when Chucky tries to put on his charm again. He's like, but Andy, we're supposed to be friends to the end.
Yeah.
He said, this is the end, friend.
Yeah.
It's great. It's such a great, and I think Alex Vincent reads that line so perfectly. Like the way he says it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm thinking a bit too much into this with this point, but there seems to be a point in the film where they kind of forget about Andy, I feel like, and I don't think there's an obvious point where that happens. I feel like the film is saying that, okay, Andy's served his purpose and we're just going to follow Karen and Chris Sarandon's character. But I think the last couple of reveals were great, where like the voodoo guy says to Chucky that the first person you revealed yourself to is the person that you can transfer your soul into.
Mm-hmm.
That happens to be Andy. So it was kind of a good way of bringing Andy back into the story, even though it felt a bit contrived, but it's better than just simply trying to kill Chucky by any means because he's kind of holding Andy hostage or something. But
right.
So I guess what I'm saying is maybe like Andy's presence is slightly lost in the middle, but they bring him back in a great way with that reveal. So a slight nitpick, but it's nothing major, I don't think, with the pacing of it. But am I being harsh?
No. I mean, I get it because they could have literally the only reason that he's brought back in is because of what you said about the whole him going to John and John explaining what he has to do to transfer his soul. Because if that wasn't the case, why bring Andy back? Just leave him in there. Leave him in there until the movie's over, and then she can go get him and be like, hey, like everything that happened. But yeah, I mean, based on the situation that it's a killer doll, like, are they really going to believe them to the point of letting him go? They'd be like, maybe we should lock up the mom too. Which they end up doing anyways.
Yeah.
So I think it was good to kind of bring Andy back because it would make more sense for Andy to be back with his mom and Mike and kind of have that final showdown with Chucky. And they all have their piece to that final battle. Which I thought was really, I think Andy was a crucial piece to that.
So funny and interesting lines. I've got a few. How do we know the damn thing that isn't stolen? Steal this yourself. I think I dated him. Was funny from the lady from the first who got
Maggie,
killed first.
Yeah.
Maggie, yeah. And of course, hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play? And I love the kind of the old couple in the elevator, and they see Chucky just in the corner.
Yeah,
and she says, "That's an ugly doll. Fuck you." From Chucky, that was great. But of course, my favorite line you've already mentioned, Parker, where Chucky says, "We're friends to the end. Remember, this is the end, friend." I mean, so good.
It's the best. So it's the best. For me, I love, so like there's the, hi, I'm Chucky, want to play. But my favorite is the end after he's dead, and you get the hi, I'm Chucky in the Charles Lee Ray voice, but then as it want to play, and then it like extends it to like the classic good guy voice and that's how it ends. I think that's, oh man, it's like chilling. My favorite, other than the iconic one in the fireplace, is when he finds out that he has to get Andy's body, and he goes, I hate to leave, John, but I have a date with a 6-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And then also when he's talking to John and he has his voodoo doll, and he's like, you really need to stop showing your customers where you hide your things, because it could be very deadly.
Yeah. Do you want a broken? What does he say? Do you want a broken leg?
Yeah. Oh man,
that was a very strong sound effect there.
Yeah, but then after he says the whole date with the 6-year-old boy, he's like, "And you have a date with death," and then stabs the voodoo doll with the iconic knife, which I have.
Oh, nice. Of course.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ones. The whole thing with Karen discovering the batteries are gone, and she's just like, talk to me, say something, or I'm gonna throw you in the fire. And he just comes out spitting at her like he is like, you stupid bitch, you slut, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
You're like, whoa, you got a potty mouth on you, man.
Or when Andy's talking to his mom after she dies, and he goes, Chucky says she's a stupid bitch that deserved to die. And she's like, why would you say that about somebody?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't say it, Chucky did.
Yeah. The poor kid. So screenplay score for me, it's pretty good. Definitely has some really interesting reveals that I didn't see coming, and just makes it more unique from your typical slasher movie. Yeah, pretty solid. So I'll go like a 7.8.
All
How
right.
about you, sir?
I'm gonna go an 8.5. I think it's well paced. I think the reveals are perfectly like put in there, and I feel, I mean, somebody could point out a flaw in the story, but I think that the story is well crafted and well put together, where it doesn't give me too much of like, oh, okay, that seems a little crazy. Like, we're talking about a movie where a dude transfers his soul to a doll using voodoo. And I think one of the things that I'm tired of hearing, especially because I love this franchise, this is my favorite horror franchise, is the whole, oh, I could just walk up and kick it. I could just kick it. Like, I could just do it. And I'm like, I don't think it would be that easy.
He's
like,
way too clever for that.
He's clever. He's too clever. And you got to think, like, in reality, like, nimble. Like, this thing, like,
he can move.
He's like 2.5 feet tall. Like, he'd be able to like climb things and jump and do things. Like, we're just not seeing that because this is 1988 and they can't show that unless you're using CG. And I don't want to see Chucky in CG. We got that with the Child's Play remake. I don't need that.
No way.
So,
I mean, he'll be on your face before you have a chance to kick him. So.
Yeah, I think he's way faster than you think, and I think you're not stopping him like you think you are. There's no way I'm running up to him. You think he's just going to stand there and take your foot? Like, no, he's going to be able to dodge you and do some crazy things. Yeah.
Your nose will be gone before you can kick him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm going to give it a solid. At 8.5, I think. I think it's just really well done from start to finish.
Acting, then. I actually really like the little crazy dying acting from Brad Dourif as Charles Lee Ray at the start, because when we get to him saying all this like ancient language into the Chucky doll, it does come from nothing, but because it doesn't come from nothing, but because he seems a little crazy, like the film just about gets away with it for me. If he was all like calm and collected, it wouldn't work at all. You know, for me, the acting does a lot of the heavy lifting in that opening for it to really work. And so I think if that's not right, you've lost your audience, to be honest.
The acting all around, even I think Alex Vincent does a good job for, a kid who's never done it before. And they're like, he wasn't an actor. Like, before this movie, this was his first go around. He was like 6 or 7 years old when he filmed this. So I can't be too harsh on him. I think he does a good job for the situation he's in. And that scene in the institution is just like, okay, this kid's got something, man. Like, he definitely can give you some good stuff. And like, everyone around, I mean, I think Brad Dourif steals the show. I mean, he's acting in the beginning of the movie, but like, his voice acting is perfect for Chucky. And I think that's why he's been doing it for the last like 36 years, is because it's been so perfect. And the supporting cast, great. I think Catherine Hicks does a great job as a concerning mother who is at first just kind of just wondering what's wrong with her kid, to then believing the crazy things that her kid is saying. And then, of course, Chris Sarandon's fantastic. I mean, if you've seen Fright Night, you know how good of an actor Chris Sarandon is. You know, Fright Night, Princess Bride, like, the dude's a legend. He was also for anyone who doesn't know, he was also the talking voice for Jack Skellington in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay.
He wasn't the singing, that was Danny Elfman, but I mean, he's a legend. I think this is another great role. I think he does well at being, that cop. He's a cop, he's just doing his job, and then things just get a little extra weird. And he pulls it off really well. Yeah,
Chris Sarandon's great. I think he's not Fright Night good, but I mean, that's just a great part, though, that he really sinks his teeth into it. Of course he does. He's a vampire. Yeah, he's great. Kristen, is that her name?
Catherine Hicks.
Catherine Hicks, sorry.
Karen. Yep.
Catherine Hicks is fantastic. She brings like a great intensity to a lot of the emotional stuff, which is great. And I was always kind of racking my brain of just like, I've seen this actress before somewhere. And I was like, she's not the mum from E.T. It's not her. Where is she from? I've seen these eyes before. And
she was the mom in a show called Seventh Heaven.
Right.
I think that was her other like huge role, was in that show, which was like in the 90s, I think.
But it's a film that I've seen many times, and she's the marine biologist from Star Trek 4.
Oh,
The Voyage Home.
I've never seen it, but I remember seeing something about that. Yeah.
She's great in that. She's just, you got to see her face when Captain Kirk says to her, "Oh, Spock's been taking too much LDS," which is great. See, it's LSD.
Yeah,
that's a great little bit in that movie. So yeah, I was racking my brain. I'm like, I've seen this person before. It didn't distract me too much, but it was in the back of my brain. Andy, the kid, Alex Vincent, it's fine. I think for me, like, one bonus is that he wasn't irritating. Big tick. Which obviously is a fault of many child actors, but I think he does a great job. But apart from near the start when he's making breakfast for his mum and making a right mess, that was annoying. Just seeing all the mess. Oh no. But yeah, I think for me, like, his best moment is when he is delivering that iconic line, "This is the end, friend." I think that was his highlight for me, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said.
Excellent. Anyone else you'd like to talk about from this movie?
Acting wise, I mean, I think the actress who plays Maggie,
yeah,
I love Dinah Menoff. I think she does great for the small role. Like, she's, she's a good friend. Like, I believe this friendship. She's a no nonsense type of person. It's one of those things where she's the first kill of the movie, and you kind of feel for her. Like, you kind of feel for Karen, and because you saw what she did to help her out before, and it, unfortunately, because of what Maggie does, that's why Andy, is in possession of Chucky. So it's kind of like her own downfall. But I think she does a great job at just the little bit that she's on screen. I love the interaction with the boss, because that guy's a dick. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, if that was today and your boss comes up to you, he's like, "Hey, so-and-so called out. You're going to have to stand." I'm like, I don't have to do anything. I'm going home when I'm supposed to. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Especially if your boss is talking to you like that. Nah.
I'm picking up my child.
Yes.
Bye. Yeah, she falls off that building brilliantly. She does a great job there. But yeah, she kind of pulls off like a great level of fear within her face, like not too much, because certainly you get that sense that at the back of her mind, like, she can't be going crazy, and it's just can't be a doll that's come alive. There's that kind of look that she has, like, there's no way this is happening, but she is kind of scared at the same time. So I think you have that level of look throughout a lot of the characters as well, but especially from her, because that's the first kind of scene where Chucky is up to no good. So yeah, she does a great job with that balance. Favorite performance for you? Who are you going for?
I mean, it's got to be Brad Dourif as the voice of Chucky. I mean, even in the beginning, his interactions with Norris in the toy store, I think, are great. When he's like, after he's shot, he's like, "I'm gonna get you no matter what," and it's just like, just that line, you're just like, this guy's scary. And I think he was perfectly cast as Chucky. I think his voice is just, it's so ingrained into my brain. I can't hear anybody else. Like, I just, Chucky is Brad Dourif, or Brad Dourif is Chucky. It's the same. A lot of people think like Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger and no one else could be, but I think that's not that. I don't think that's true. Like, they did it with the Child's Play remake. They did something different. They got a different voice actor to do Chucky, and it just, and it's not that I don't like Mark Hamill. I love Mark Hamill, but Brad Dourif to me is Chucky. Even though he's in a booth recording his lines, it doesn't matter. He brings that character to life. So I definitely got to give it to him.
Yeah, I think I'll give it to Brad Dourif as well as my favorite performance. I think it's just always just really cool hearing a voice actor just really going for it and really creating a unique voice for a horror character like this. Just really fascinating to hear. He's really good. So, acting score for me for Child's Play. Yeah, difficult. I like Andy kind of does bring it down a little bit, not because he's bad, but because it's just he's not amazing, but everyone else is excellent. So I will go like a 7.5, maybe sitting on the fence a little bit, but
okay.
Yeah, everyone's brilliant, but I don't think there's anything too special. I think, well, the special performance is from Brad Dourif as Chucky, but then Alex Vincent as Andy just brings it down a little bit. So I think 7.5 works for me.
I'm going to go a whole point higher. I'm going to go 8.5. I think,
Nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think Alex Vincent is probably the weakest of this cast, but he's also 6, so it's hard to be super judgmental. And like you said earlier, he's not annoying. He's not that kid you're like, oh god, get him out of here. I'm sick of listening to this kid. Like, I think he does well for what he's given, and to act scared and to read some pretty hard lines for a 6-year-old, I think is pretty impressive. But yeah, he's got a great supporting cast around him that really do a great job. I think Catherine Hicks nails it. Chris Sarandon nails it. Like everybody else, there's not a huge cast in this movie. Like that Mike's coworker there, he's in the movie for like 3 minutes. Like and he does a pretty decent job. Of the whole. When they're leaving that crime scene, and he's like, "Hey, send this to the lab," and he's like, "What?" He's like, "What is it?" He's like, "Potential murder weapon." He's like, "Really?" And it's like this tiny little hammer. I think it's really well done. And of course, we talked about Dina Manoff, who played Maggie. I think she does great. Like, I don't hate anyone. Like the peddler, he sucks. He's a shitty character, but I think the guy does a great job at being that slime ball, homeless guy.
Great creepy look to him. Yeah.
Just does a great job. Yeah. So, 8.5.
Excellent. Right, let's add up the scores then for Child's Play. Yep. Child's Play gets a very respectable 49.5, which blows Friday the 13th, the final chapter, out of the water with 38.3. So Child's Play wins this episode pretty comfortably, as I thought at the start of recording. Next episode, we are going back to our Legends episode, where we will be focusing our attention on Sean Connery Bond films. So that'll be a cool one, and I'll have guests for that one from the Reviewing History podcast. So that'll be definitely a good one to catch in your ears. Parker, you have been amazing as always. Always love it when you are on the show. Always a great giggle and very informative about horror, especially. This is your opportunity to tell us about your podcast, and where can we find you, sir?
Well, I am Parker. Once again, I am 1/3 of Dissect That Film, a podcast that pretty much breaks down the plots of all sorts of movies, all genres, in our own special way. We pretty much dissect the plots in our own special way. You can find us pretty much everywhere. We're on all the social media apps, even the newer ones like Blue Sky and Threads and all that, at either Dissect That Film or at Dissect That Film Pod. And we're on all the podcast apps at Dissect That Film and on YouTube at Dissect That Film.
Excellent stuff. Right, it's time to say goodbye, people. I know it's very sad. It's very sad, but it's got to happen. Can't do this all night. It is goodbye from Parker. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Love the singing. Love it. And it's thrown me. It's thrown me. So good. It is goodbye from me. I am going to avoid all people with hockey masks and Chucky dolls. And don't try and kick those people. Don't. It's going to jump on your face and you're going to lose a nose. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favorite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast. for X at FVF underscore podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.